Hey guys, happy Easter. I am here with Courtney and Sam today, and we're going to be talking a little bit about how church and religion has been kind of reacting and going with COVID-19. I know that there's a lot of people that have been covering this in the media, but I wanted to hear a little bit from my friends who work with the church. So without further ado, here is Courtney and Sam.
Hi, Celia.
Hey. How was my awkward intro? I'm very awkward with the intros. I've been like in my head and making sure I don't pronounce people's names wrong.
Way more awkward backstage.
Yeah, we were hysterical. We were like trying to quiet laugh because we didn't know if like our audio would be picked up. So we were just quiet laughing and being idiots. But yeah, you did fine.
Good. I was able to see you guys in the bottom. I was like, I have to vamp until they're not laughing anymore. But anyway, let's get back to the point of why we're here. Tell everyone a little bit about yourselves and your connection with the church.
You want to go?
Yeah, sure. So, Courtney and I pastor a youth group in Mastic Beach, New York.
Yeah, we co-direct the youth, and so usually we meet every Friday from like 6:30 to 9, and check in on the kids midweek. But obviously, this is some seriously unprecedented times. I've been in youth ministry for a really long time, and I've never had to deal with anything like this. So.
Yeah, I feel like with everything going on, there's no rule book. There's no how to get through everything. And I know a lot of people have been struggling with both, obviously, work and keeping in touch with both friends, family, and just keeping a sense of community through all of this. Mm-hmm. So what have you guys been doing with, obviously, like your youth group to keep up with them in this time?
Well, if you think it's hard keeping up with your family and friends, it's even harder keeping up with a bunch of 12 to 15-year-olds who don't really want to talk to anyone right now. They just want to hide.
Yeah.
It's definitely what have you guys been kind of doing to try and, like, obviously keep in touch with them? I know they may not want to talk to you, but what have you guys been trying at least?
Yeah, it's definitely hard to get their attention, but right now, I mean, we're definitely in a really good spot compared to where we could be due to like the technology that we have. But we use Zoom to get in front of their face live. We use Instagram a lot. We post a lot of videos, teach through there. We have a lot of Instagram interaction. It's hard because a lot of these kids they got their schoolwork that they're doing. They have unlimited TV, phone. I mean, the idea is like,
you're competing with things that.
Yeah. So right now it's like the idea is to get in front of them and get in their news feed more than the other stuff that's going to distract them, and it's just impossible some days.
Yeah. So we've been using Zoom for like larger meetings. We've been using House Party for like some smaller stuff, because House Party has the ability to like play games. So we feel that that's like an easier way to small group with them in the middle of the week, or just kind of like text to check in and see how they're doing, is, to be like, hey, let's 8 of us go on House Party and like play apples to apples or something like that. So we've been trying it all kinds of different ways. We've been dropping short, like devotional 5-minute videos on Instagram, TV. And we even tried like doing like a Sunday service, like a short like worship, like music section, and then a short like message. So we've been trying it really any way you can slice it. We've been trying it.
It's a lot of shots in the dark.
Yeah, it's very experimental at this point.
At least you guys sound like you are making the effort to get out to them, whereas a lot of people probably, you guys obviously are younger. Some people don't know how to use these kinds of technologies, and especially things like Zoom or live streams and things like that isn't something that they're comfortable with, or they're not used to being on camera. So it's probably a little more difficult for some people to kind of start that conversation of how are we going to keep in touch with these people.
Yeah. Like I know specifically for my dad does youth ministry for a different church. And he's been doing FaceTime with the kids every week. But it was funny because we were having a conversation the other day of like, what if this had happened like 20 or 30 years ago? Like everything just would have stopped. Like you would have called your family members and checked in on them, but like you wouldn't have been able to do church or business meetings. Like you just wouldn't have.
Yeah. Another thing that I've been trying to do is like meeting up with the youth kids, like in public parks, going to play basketball, going to field.
Not large group, like one-on-one.
Like batting practice and stuff like that with the kids. But that was only until like a week and a half ago. And since then, now all those places are closed off. They're patrolled by the cops and stuff. So even that's gotten closed down too.
We even took a youth out this past week to go like geocaching, just like with us, because you know their family is like close family friends, and so you know we just thought, hey, we'll try and get Caleb out of the house. So we went geocaching with him. Like it's just honestly, it's like for youth leaders or even just like church leadership in general, you'll find a way if you're trying to like reach out to somebody. It's like with anything else. If you want to reach out bad enough, you'll find somehow to reach out.
And if you're looking for an excuse to get to be relieved from responsibility, it's very easy. I feel like this is a time that really exposes the motives of people's hearts.
Yeah.
I agree, because I've seen just from being online different people handling all of this in different ways. There's the parent complaining that their kids are home and that they don't know how to help like entertain them or help I guess with the Zoom learning and everything that they're going through with that. There's the people that are just sitting on the couch doing nothing. There's the people like me that are posting a ton, which it sounds like you guys are also posting a ton, but in a different way. And then there's the people that are just, for lack of a better word, drinking all day and having their wine. So everyone's handling everything differently, but I think it's really great that you guys are still in touch with all of the kids from the youth group, because that is such a communal place for them to get together that has kind of been taken away from them in this situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and also I think it's kind of cool because like with Instagram, you can follow anyone. So like, I know that I follow like a couple of different youth groups, and like, if they're doing something and I'm like, oh, wow, that might work. Like you can like pull ideas from different people, and it's not like, not like any community is like, oh, you copied us or anything. We're all just like trying our best. Like,
I definitely see like between church, like, unfortunately, I think the movement of like the American churches, there's like a lot of competition and jealousy between congregations and churches, which is not good at all. But I feel like something like this is really helpful for unifying a lot of the congregations and a lot of the bodies. It's actually kind of cool. A lot of people coming in peace, and because we're realizing how much we need each other.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that there's a silver lining with all of this, at least in that case, because I know that a lot of the just general outlook on everything right now is we're all in this together. And it's really great that like the world has kind of come to that, because obviously everyone's stuck home. I had someone message me on Instagram, and he was in Russia, and he's like, hey, like, we're on lockdown. How long have you guys been on lockdown? And I'm just like, it's been like a month. And they're like, oh, it's been 2 weeks. But everyone has that same experience that they're dealing with right now. I know that at least with church and with youth group and all of that, everyone's used to getting into the same place, the same building, to have that one-on-one experience. How has that kind of changed in the past few weeks, and what are the things that you guys have noticed?
Sure. So I think that what's interesting about coronavirus is that it's kind of posed some philosophical questions to the church. Like we've become so used to Sundays going to church, spending time with the body of Christ, and that is basically we've fallen into this routine of going to a place with a body of people and doing the same thing week after week after week. But when you look at the Bible, when you look at scripture, like we're called to be the church at large, like we're called to be a larger community rather than just 2 hours on a Sunday. So I think that it's kind of challenged each and every church member on an individual basis of how much do I contribute to the church at large? How much am I actually a part of the church? Like, am I mentally there, or am I just going through the motions?
Yeah, definitely. It's like, I think a general pattern of a lot of Christianity is like dependence on the church, dependence on your local pastor, dependence on the programs surrounding a church, to the point where it almost gets to a point where like you're so dependent on that you actually neglect your own personal walk with the Lord. You neglect your own responsibility to personally experience and encounter the Lord daily and to commune with Him. And I think I've seen on social media a lot of people really stepping up and maturing in their faith because they're forced to, and really stepping up and taking action. Like I'm seeing a lot of people, instead of like on Black Friday, Good Friday, I saw so many families taking communion together as families around the dinner table, and that to me was one of the most beautiful things. That like everyone being forced to be cooped up together has almost like
restored what the church should be.
It's restored Christ as the center of households, and I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I hit the wrong button. Hey guys. I'm like literally switching the cameras while I'm talking to you guys. But I think that's really interesting because people think of going to church and they think of, all right, Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. And that's their, I guess, outlook on what it's going to be, what the experience is. The experience is the experience because they're going to this service on Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting that instead of just having that as the mindset of I'm going there and that is the time that I am putting towards this, like my religion, I think it's really interesting that people are taking that, they're doing it at home, and it's actually probably a lot more, I hate to use the word effective, there's probably a better word, but effective in getting people to connect with their religion rather than just listening to obviously like the sermon or whatever is happening at the physical building.
Well, it's being intentional. It's being intentional. It's saying, well, my pastor is not going to be speaking directly to me this week. So, maybe I will pick up my Bible and do more reading this week, or being intentional about listening to worship music and shutting yourself in alone, or prayer, or, being intentional about reaching out to people that you would normally see at church. So I think that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think like almost like that Sunday morning Christian mentality that like you sort of alluded to, which generally I think that a lot of the church gets negative feedback for, and just so many people live Christian walk, and the only thing they ever do or experience is a Sunday morning. I feel like another benefit of COVID is the fact that I see so many more Christians walking out of that place, stepping out from that place of the Sunday morning Christian mentality. I feel justified in myself. I've checked the box. I've checked my spiritual weekly diligence box, and I don't have to do any more. People are like this is really exposing the fact that that's just not enough, and that that's not true Christianity. And you can't truly say that you're a Christian surrendered to Christ if that's all you live. And I see a lot more people are realizing that, and they're becoming dependent on the Lord more than ever, and realizing how much they actually need Him. And it's really beneficial to the life and the faith of Christians everywhere.
Yeah, and you touched on it earlier, but like, it's cool because you can log on to Facebook and you can see like a family that you live life with, you see on a regular basis, but now that same family is like leading worship out of their home and just happens to Facebook Live what it is that they're doing so that anybody can enjoy what it is. But like, it's like, wow, I didn't even know that family was musical, and they're praising the Lord together. So it's cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah, I know. I saw the exact family that you're talking about. They were on their front porch and they set up all of their instruments and they were playing out towards, I guess, the street, and whoever was going to watch on Facebook and be there live, which is great, and which is building that community and bringing people together, because obviously, like I mentioned earlier, we don't have the building, and people are finding ways around it, which is great. And I was wondering if you guys had like a couple of examples of how people can worship at home on their own time, different ideas that they can incorporate into their day, because people are home doing nothing.
One thing, scripture, being in the Word of God as far as like worship is really pinnacle. I mean, it's so important. Even if like families want to just take a book of the Bible and read through a chapter a day together, that's huge, because that's something that I know a lot of even Christian families don't do. They don't have time for it. They don't prioritize for it. And there's just so much transformation when we talk about how do I hear from God? So many. That's the big question in Christianity. Well, how you hear from the Lord and how you're led by Him is by being in His Word.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of families totally transformed by putting aside time to worship God through reading His inerrant Word.
And I even saw like a single mom that we know on Facebook, like posted about how she was taking like a children's Bible and they were going to read through one of the Gospels with their kids, so that when, Good Friday and Easter comes up, that they would be reading, they would like time it so that they were reading it on the day and using it as a teaching tool. So I just think that, it doesn't have to be an instrument. It doesn't have to be actual singing songs to the Lord. It can be, it can be however it is that you're setting aside time to devote to learning or going deeper or just spending time, in that place.
Yeah, and like I had mentioned earlier, like there's families taking part in Holy Communion together in their homes. Which I think is really awesome, because there's a bad stigma, or if you will, a bad stigma in a lot of denominations of Christianity that Holy Communion it's reserved only for Sundays. Only someone of this amount of education can lead it. And biblically, that's just not true at all. The gospel completely wipes that out. The disciples were told to partake in it as often as they are in remembrance of Jesus. And there is transformational power in partaking in it, and reminding ourselves and speaking it over our hearts again, the atonement of the work of Christ that just transforms the life of a believer. And it's really awesome to see people doing that in their own home. They're taking initiative to pursue that. And I think that's beautiful.
And I think also, like, a lot of the time, like, I think that the main function of the church should be its ability to restore hope and peace to people, especially in times like this. So, like, I know, like, a lot of people are afraid or have anxiety or are upset because they can't go to work, they can't provide for their families, and sometimes that fear and anxiety that we have as adults can bleed out onto our kids. And so I think that, if your child comes to you, or if a family member comes to you and voices their fear over the virus, or their negative feelings over it, like if you're looking for places to worship the Lord or get plugged into something like that, those emotions can be used to turn yourself towards Christ and funnel those into something far more positive and effective. So I know, like, if your kid comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm afraid," and you could say, "Well, let's pray to Jesus about it," and then take that negative emotion and put it into a positive place of pursuing the Lord.
Yeah, we're actually, like, scripturally, we're very much directed to not walk by sight, like what we can see around us, the chaos that is going on with COVID. We're very much called to not emotionally um, react to those things, but rather emotionally react to what we know in faith. So as to not walk by sight, but to walk by faith, because we have a much greater hope in what lies ahead in heaven, in the glories of Christ that are to be revealed, rather than to be so be so focused on the suffering now.
Yeah, I love that you guys touched upon bringing people together in all of this, in all of your points. And I know that I've seen a lot of people on social media posting scripture and posting about their families doing things together, bringing people together, whether it's in their own homes or bringing people together across, I guess, the internet, which is awesome. And I was going to ask if you guys noticed like a pickup of people turning to, obviously, religion in what's happening, because it could be a very isolating, scary thing that's going on. But obviously, like, if you are praying and keeping everything present with you, have you seen like people turning towards religion more so in this time?
I'd say so.
I would say so too.
I would say so. I mean, yeah, definitely the budding stages of a lot of people's faith. I think it's really coming up.
I think when we are finally able to meet again, there will be a lot of people that come out that have never really stepped foot into a church before. I mean, like I said before, like, the church's function in times like these is to comfort and give peace and give hope. So, like, I mean, even we were so young when this happened, but like 9/11 happens and everybody wants to, start going to church because they're in a fearful place.
Yeah, I think that is the heart's response when it is confronted with the potential idea of the end. Like, no, seriously, like
death is looming. Let's go to church.
Yeah, like that's typically a trend. Like, if someone's forced to face the reality of the end of their life, death, then they're forced to face the reality of, what really is next? What's next? And that's the first time in their life for a lot of people that they're forced to confront that issue.
Yeah.
And then they start to search, they start to question, they start to ask, they start to wonder, and that starts to spur seeds of faith in their heart.
Yeah.
And I think that's another great, beautiful thing of calamity like this, is that it starts to lay soil that faith can just grow in. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, especially when you hear like really like terrible things that are happening so close to home. Like my aunt works at Stony Brook Hospital, and like just the stories that she like comes home with, it's like it is really scary, the people that die. And like it's like I live 15 minutes from Stony Brook University. It's so it's closer to home than it ever really has been before.
Yeah. Or another thing that that our church has been doing over the last month, like you talked about how the church is really there in times like this to create hope, and sometimes it's there to create provision and help those families that we mentioned who are scared that they can't put food on the table. So we have an operation called Feeding Hope that was birthed out of the church that we're a part of, and they get together and they cook like 200 to 300 meals
so much food
every Saturday, and then they go and they deliver them. They ship them out to different elderly folk who it's too dangerous to leave their house, and they'll just leave the food on the porch. Underprivileged families with single mothers and whatnot. So it's really cool to see the amount of people that have come together, not just with encouragement, but with actual provision and giving up part of themselves for others.
And especially when the schools closed down, our church and I know other people in the area were like teaming up together to bring lunches to the kids that depend on free lunch for the school. So there's just like a lot of like really good, like, it doesn't even have to be like church related stories, just like human interest stories where like you're like, wow, humanity is still good and like we still care and think about each other.
That sounds like you guys in your church community have been very busy these past few weeks, which is amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm glad I caught you guys to do this instead of, watching Cortney make 200 meals. No, I'm kidding. That I would pay to see. So I wanted to ask you guys, for those people that have that connection to their Sunday morning, I would say ritual and being involved with what obviously their church is doing on a daily basis. I'm going to say daily just because some people are there on more than just Sunday. Have you seen a lot of churches moving to things like live streams to keep involved with obviously their typical sermons and things along those lines? And if you've seen that, like, how have people been reacting to that? Has there been have you seen a lot of viewership? Have people been commenting?
Yeah, this is really awesome because I didn't even think of it until right now. But I guess one thing that I've observed is that yes, every church is basically doing live stream. Every church posts some sort of sermon, some sort of message on Sundays. But then what's really cool is what happens when they post it, and everybody from that congregation on Facebook shares it and retweets it and reposts it and puts it on their story. Now that message is no longer just being shared to the 100 to 200 people that show up every Sunday. Instead, that's being shared to the 100 to 200 people that showed up on Sunday, plus each of their 500 followers. And it's really cool.
I think at this point, if you're not doing a virtual service, I don't know how you're doing church.
And you're missing out on a lot of evangelistic opportunities.
So, I mean, I know our church on Sunday does every Sunday what they would normally do in the building. They just live stream it. They have a church office because we don't have like a building. We use a property owners association building every week. But they have an office building in Mastic Beach on Neighborhood Road. And they set up like all the instruments to do music. And then the pastor comes out, he stands at his, little podium and he gives the message for this week. And it's exactly akin to what would happen if you were in the church on any given Sunday. It's just happening live stream. I know my parents, their church is just doing the message. The pastor's just sitting at the pulpit, just giving the message, and it's like 20 to 30 minutes, but it's, again, the same thing.
I've seen a few churches switch days from Sundays to maybe a Friday or a Saturday because they know that everyone's going to be watching a different church's presentation on a Sunday, and so they switch it up and you get a lot of exposure.
So there's cool. And there's definitely a lot of people that were getting ready to go to church for the very few times a year that they go to church because of Easter. So I would say to any of those people, it's incredibly easy to find a service to plug into. If that church that you usually go to has a website, their chances are that they are live streaming something. And even if you can't find something, you can, easily go on YouTube and get one of those larger super churches that are prevalent on YouTube and plug into one of those.
Was this something that you guys saw before all of coronavirus was happening, like something that was like common, or do you think that just the availability of technology has kind of transferred into, I guess, the church and how they get their word out?
Our church live streams every Sunday. So the only thing that's different to them is that there's no one there. So yeah, a lot of churches actually do live stream or podcast their messages.
That's common.
It's very common. So I think it's just kind of continuing on in what they are usually doing, except now they're just doing it with no people in the seats.
But what's awesome about that is that it doesn't necessarily, that doesn't have to be bad. That's the beauty of what we as Christians believe in, that the Holy Spirit of God was poured out on saints and on believers, and therefore I don't have to necessarily be presently there in the exact same location as what's happening. I have the same Holy Spirit in my home as there is in the church building.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that same experience is still available to all believers and all people, even from behind a screen.
And it's also really cool because, like, we are plugged into a church. We're active participants. We are church goers. But like, if there's a church that we hear about, I know Sam follows a ton of different pastors that are from like California or like Texas.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool because the church has been moving into this virtual space where you sit under a pastor every single week, but you have the ability to also plug into resources that other pastors have online, just because they're putting stuff out there, and you can find things that are really helpful.
Yeah, and I think that's also really cool because I think a trend in Christianity also is that there's a lot of discouragement for a lot of pastors. They end up feeling very isolated, and they end up feeling very attacked with like little on their side sometimes, just because of the natural feedback from the world on the Christian church a lot of times. So it's cool that now that we have this opportunity, like you said, I can be exposed to all these other preachers, all these fellow pastors, all these other churches. It's kind of opening up, I think, a lot of the eyes of a lot of local pastors to be in communication and contact and now relationship with a lot of other people who are and other church leaders and pastors who are dealing with these same frustrations, fears, problems, and they're there to encourage each other and build each other up and push each other onward towards the goal continuously. So that's cool that there's, and that's unity being built up in the church,
which is what we needed for a really long time.
Sam brought up a really interesting point earlier about the fact that people are tuning in and they're sharing, and their followers are finding out about, obviously, like these live streams and these, I guess, connections to the church that are available to them. Do you think because everyone has kind of shifted to being at home and sharing the word that way, that it's bringing more to the attention of people that may not think that those resources are available for them? The people that are like, oh, well, I'm not available on Sunday to go to this church, finding out that they can pull the sermon up on their phone. Do you think that's going to change the amount of people involved with those kinds of live streams and those kinds of messages?
Sure, why not? Yeah, I mean, there's definitely I know of a couple of families that they work on Sunday, and so they haven't been plugged in with a church for years potentially, and now they can all get together and sit on the couch on a Wednesday or a Tuesday or a Thursday or whatever night and do church together as a family at home. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it takes a moment like this and a situation like this to remind people what's actually important, to remind people that they're overscheduled, that they have too much going on. Like, I literally was thinking the other day, I was like, wow, this has been like a really like much needed like pause to everything that I had going on prior to this going on. And I just feel like it's really important for everyone to like just take a breath, take the relaxation that they've been given, but also remember that when the world picks up again, you don't have to overschedule yourself again. Like there are other things that makes life more meaningful. There are other things that life is all about. So I think that that stuff like this is a good reminder for like humanity in general, that you know, we can be, or we can do and add more meaning to our lives than we had before. So I think like as far as that goes with the church, like if somebody has not been very active in the church and is feeling in this moment right now, like, wow, I wish I had more of like a spiritual side or you know, something to that nature, that they can do that.
And that's not attained by work. That's not attained by production. That's not attained by anything that we can do. Well, what we believe is that the Lord told us, be still and know that I am God. That's in scripture. Yeah. Be still and know that I am God. In other words, cease all of your aggressive activities and yield to the supremacy of God. And that is something that is proving itself to be so necessary now. The two of us are gluttons for punishment as far as overloading our schedule. It's crazy, and it's all good intention, but how effective and how joyful can I be in those things if I'm not taking the time to be still and know that He is God and reflect in that sense. So that's really good. Another thing is another positive outcome of the whole social media, and like you said, sharing. Everybody is sharing the live videos from their pastor, and that's being exposed to 5 more people, and then they'll expose that to 5 more people, etc. And it goes down the line. So a lot of people don't disagree with the truth of Christianity. They disagree with how they believe or how they see the church functions. And, you know, in other words, they think the church is only out to get what they can get out of me. That's the only reason why they want me. Their motive is, what can they get from me as a congregant? Money-wise, time-wise, volunteer-wise, affirmation-wise, whatever it may be. And I think this is actually really good for the church, in being that they're behind a screen. What can they get out of the congregant now? Statistically, it's showing that tithing and offerings are going, financially, are going way down the tubes for a lot of churches. So I think when someone who is turned off from the church because they believe that the church is only there to get what they can get out of the congregant, they're now seeing hundreds and hundreds of churches going hard every single day, putting out all this content, and realizing
they're not getting a thing out of it.
They're not doing, then finally realize the church is not doing this to get anything out of me. They're doing it because they love the Lord, and they're doing it because they love me and that they want me
to have the resource.
And it's not about what the church can get out of the congregant, which is what pushes most people away. And I think that's really being exposed right now. That's good.
Definitely. And it's the same thing with other things like businesses and large entities, that people are watching how these, I'm going to say, congregations of people are reacting to, obviously, like the virus, and how they're reacting to keeping both their followers, their audience, whatever the correct term is for like that business. People are taking notice on how they're taking the time to reach out or not reach out, or how they're taking care of, say, if it's a business, their employees or not, or if they're laying people off. Everything that people are doing right now is very much like in the public eye. So the fact that all of the churches are stepping up, making this content, and like Sam said, they're not doing it because they're getting something out of it. They're not being paid to go and do these live streams and continue their day-to-day. They're doing this so that it brings peace of mind to other people and brings people together in such an isolating time. So that's a really good point that you brought up. I want to kind of circle back to something else Sam said, with like kind of the perception of the media a little bit right now, because with all of the great things that we've been talking about, that people have been doing these live streams, they've been sharing the word of the Lord and all of these things. The news has been talking about how some churches are still getting together, and some people are getting in trouble for that. What have you guys been hearing? Because I know at least I was FaceTiming my friend, and he lives by an Orthodox Jewish community, and those Orthodox Jewish people choose not to listen to the CDC, and they're still gathering. Many of them are getting sick. Many rabbis are dying because they're older and they're getting sick. And they're getting fined for just getting together and living their normal lives right now.
Yeah, big fines too.
Yeah. So what have you guys seen?
There's really not that much talk back to authorities from the church in this area, but I see, like we had mentioned, way down south, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, a lot of places like that. People are doing the drive-through churches where they'll pull up in their car and sit in the parking lot, and then the preacher, the worship team, will do the service in the parking lot, and they'll
it's almost like a drive-in movie.
Yeah, essentially. And but we've seen even those now get crashed with the authorities throwing $500 fines on anybody, not just the preacher, but the people who pull up in their car.
Yeah. I think that has more so to do with the fact that in the U.S., because it's such a big country and the populations are concentrated in certain areas and less concentrated in others, I think it's more so that they're like in Nebraska, where there's like not that many people around and there's not many cases of, COVID, that they're maybe not taking it as seriously as we are out here in New York, where it's like pretty high risk. I don't know of any churches in our area that are still meeting.
Yeah, no, not up here, because I think, especially in New York, where it's the worst it is in the country, people are pretty respectful.
Yeah. So, I mean, our church is definitely planning on, like, we're probably not going to be able to meet the whole congregation for quite some time. So once they tell us that we can meet, maybe we'll only be able to meet up to like 15 or 20 people. We're going to do smaller home church models is what the pastor's been talking about. And we only know about this because we're on the leadership team. So like going to, say, like my house, we'll have 15 people from the congregation at my house. We'll do worship and a word together. And that'll be like church for us. And then,
there'll be
20 other houses are going to do the same thing.
It'll be like a ton of mini churches.
So it's going to be like that for a while. And unfortunately for us, our youth group uses the school because, again, we don't have a building. So we use the William Floyd School District for our venue for youth group. And if the school opens up again and says still no after school activities, then we're washed. So what we've been talking about that we're going to do is doing like, different events with the youth, and maybe doing like a geocache night where like all the kids get in like a leader's car, and like the leader goes out and like goes geocaching with the kids, and like then that's like 1 week, okay, fine, taken care of. And then maybe the next week going to somebody's house and doing a youth thing in their backyard, because thankfully we're headed towards the summer months, so we can do stuff outside again. So I think that it's gonna be a long while of being creative, but I think that it's just the church has been adaptable since its beginning. So
we'll just continue to roll with the punches. But I think also there is being exposed a very interesting relationship between the church and the state, obviously. And that even the church is divided on its beliefs about what they should do about this. Like many denominations, many Christians believe we must obey authorities no matter what they say. We must obey them because they were sovereignly appointed and instituted by the Lord. And that is an obedient and it's pleasing to the Lord to simply obey. And then there's the other half of Christianity that says, okay, well, actually, let's look at the full context of the New Testament and see that there are many times where the early church actually went against the state. They went against the authorities, and they still spread the gospel, and they still met in certain situations, not COVID-19, but in different situations where they were told not to, because, yes, those governing authorities were instituted by God. However, they were instituted to bring about good works in the people. So there's different there's different sides within the church on how to go about how strictly will we go along with the governing authorities, and we need to use discernment and wisdom, really, and wisdom for and realize what's going to be for the better of the specific congregation. Like, there's a lot of congregations that are all 70 plus.
Yeah.
You can't be meeting. I mean, that's
those are vulnerable groups.
That's an absolute health hazard for them. And there's other churches where, they have communities where it might be okay, and they might, with their wisdom and discernment, they might find it acceptable to still meet to a certain capacity. But there's different beliefs and different sides.
Well, I'm glad that you guys have at least a plan at your church and a plan for your youth group for the upcoming months. And when we get the okay go of, hey, you don't have to be home anymore, you guys aren't just going to jump right into, hey, we're all going to come in one place, and potentially someone might be sick, because there's no rule book for this. And I think I said that earlier. And the scariest part of the virus is you might have it, but you're not going to know for 2 weeks. So I think that you guys are being smart with breaking it down to smaller groups for at least the transition period, because I know for me, I work events, and like some of those events are weddings and things along those lines, which obviously there's a church ceremony for many people involved. And the amount of people and the amount of I would say closeness that everyone sits in those kinds of events could be a problem. So I think that at least on that end, it's going to take a little bit of transition time to get back where we were before this.
Yeah.
So hopefully not too much, but at least people are cautious now when they may not have been previously, because apparently people needed to learn how to wash their hands during this situation.
They had to relearn happy birthday.
Yeah, definitely. So are there any other silver linings, or maybe we can recap a couple of the silver linings that we've kind of discussed in this conversation for anyone that tuned in a little late, about maybe people getting more involved with the church while they're home for the virus, for just kind of more so a recap?
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot. I would say that a big silver lining is that the function of the church is to uplift and give hope and comfort. So like I was saying before, in times like these where people are afraid, like 9/11 or COVID or anything that, makes people afraid or angry or have negative emotions, is that the church's function in moments like those is to bring people closer to the Lord, and the Lord, is dripping with peace and comfort and all of those kinds of things. So,
and reason.
Yeah. So I think that it's a good place to push those energies towards, in the hope that you can change your mindset, change your perspective, or where you are. I think another silver lining is that there's tons of resources out there for you. I know for me, myself, I have a website, Soul Deep Devotions. I've not been interrupted because it's all online. So and the church has been taking steps, not in precaution for this, just because the way the world is an online world. So the church has been pushing more towards going online and doing more things online, as far as services and podcasts and all kinds of different stuff. So the church was definitely probably one of the most prepared, I would say, industries for something like this. So there's definitely more than a few ways to get plugged into somewhere. And then another silver lining is that the church is still doing stuff. Like, we were talking about how our church is still going out and feeding people who are needy and at risk and coming together.
It's almost another, like, the silver lining, really, it's really exploding the generosity of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really awesome, because I think as Christians it is very easy to get comfortable, stale sometimes, and forget why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been a very good way to have our entire lives refocused on the person of Christ. In our homes, in our alone time, in church itself, in families, and just in the day-to-day. And the amount of generosity that's coming out of people right now is incredible. It's incredible, really. And the unity in the church, of course. A lot of different denominations who typically pin themselves against each other
need to come together.
Petty secondary arguments are now coming together and being forced to unify under the name of Jesus. And that's incredible.
Yeah.
So do you think that after all of this has happened and what we're going through, that the church is going to come out stronger on the other end?
Yes.
Absolutely.
That was a very definite answer.
Well, we've seen it happen before. I mean, we talk about, I know I keep saying this, but like in 9/11, tons of people came out to church and tons of people turned back to the church. It's just the way that it happens with stuff like this.
Yeah. And even politically speaking, everybody's pitting themselves against each other, of course, but like in the aftermath of a lot of these things, a lot of people come together, even in the secular world. But we're seeing it day to day in the lives of the youth that we work with, people that we minister to and talk to and spend our time teaching. Yes, I can definitively say that after this, we're going to come out and it's going to be stronger. People's faiths are going to be stronger. People are going to be hungrier for the Lord. We're seeing it in the kids' lives now, every day. I mean, we're getting testimonies and messages from people's parents, from people's family members, like just giving examples and testimonies of how the kids having a light in their life, even amidst the calamity, has completely changed their lives.
Like, and we were saying before, it is hard to get our whole group can be up to 30 kids at any given time. But there are a few kids that come out religiously every week, that watch every video, that are a part of every small group discussion that we have. And those parents turn to us and say, our kid has never had more joy in a really long time than they have right now, because they have hope. And we're giving them something to do with all of this time that they have. But it's really encouraging to hear people say, like, especially for us, because it's our job description to, help these kids, but to really see that the people that live with them and spend their lives with them are seeing a marked change in them. That's really encouraging to us.
Yeah.
It really shows how much both you guys and I guess your church in particular, because obviously you're getting all these testimonies, are really touching so many people's lives.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that all of the hard work that you guys are doing is paying off and you're getting that response back, because that's amazing. So great job, guys. So we're coming up towards the end of the the hour, because we've been talking for a while, but how, once again, if people want to follow you guys, how would they get a hold of you, and where can they follow you? And I know that you guys have a couple of different spots that they can do that, so let's hear a little bit about how they can connect with you.
Well, you go first.
Well, we at the bottom of the screen is our
handles,
our social media handles. I'm there. That's Instagram. Also,
we're not very good at self-promotion, if you can't tell.
Also, that's down there. Samuel Wente on Instagram, Twitter, whatever. A lot of faith-based content. but also our church.
Yeah. My Home Church.
My Home Church on Instagram.
And our youth group is called Rebel Next, so it's Rebel Next Youth at Instagram, or on Instagram. I know for me myself, there's the handle that's down there. That's for my devotional ministry that I do. I put out a new devotional every Tuesday morning, or my, personal stuff is Cortney Rosie. So
lots of different ways that they can get in touch and kind of see what you guys are up to. I know I knew that was going to be a question that was going to throw you guys for a loop. You've had an answer for every other thing, but I was like, all right, where?
Yeah.
You guys did a good job. You guys have a lot to cover, and hopefully
part of our job at this point is being glued to our phones.
Yeah,
so people can bother you.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you guys one more time for coming on. I know that today is Easter, and it's so great that you guys had taken a little time to talk with us and basically like provide all of this information for people that may not know what's going on, especially with the church.
Yeah.
And especially, I think today was a great day for us to have this topic.
Agreed.
Thanks, Celia.
No problem.
Is Passover over, or is it like, is Passover over?
No, it's still going. It overlaps almost every year.
Okay.
My family, they are doing the whole chicken soup and matzah thing. I did not think that I would be stuck home whilst all this is happening, so I have no matzah. So sad face there, but I can always make matzo balls another time during the year. I'm not really 100% sure what my family is doing for all of the nights, but I know that there are a bunch of like Broadway celebrities. All the Jewish ones are getting together for like a theater night, including like everyone from like Fran Fine, Harvey I don't want to get that wrong on this. Very close to being bad, but all of those people. I last night did a seder on a live. It was really cool. So people are doing a lot of different things, and I know I just saw something pop up from my cousin saying like, "Hey, let's all get on Zoom and get together that way." So at least my family's gonna be getting together that way.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's great.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's quiet over here in the land of Passover.
Cool.
But everyone is still making jokes that the plagues from Passover are happening right now.
Oh, well,
10 plagues.
There you go.
Yeah, someone sent an article saying that there's a bunch of locusts in Africa right now. So who knows? Maybe the world really is ending, but hopefully not. But again, thank you guys for coming on today, and I hope you guys have a great Easter.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right. Bye, guys. All right, so thank you everyone for tuning in today. I'm a little hot up here. My heat went on, and you can tell how red my face is. But if you guys have any more questions for Cortney and Sam, feel free to follow them on their social media. It's at the bottom of the screen here. And I hope you guys have a great Easter, and I will see you guys next time.